Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are taking a look at the final and third part of our little mini-series here, talking about these underdeveloped subtypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! We started out with flip monsters, talked about them, then we talked about Geminis, and now today we're talking about spirit monsters. Arguably of the three, the least developed, the least talked about, the least interesting, because they just really don't have much going on. They don't even have a lot of support cards. They only have a handful of what I would consider actually potentially good spirit cards. And so yeah. So the first thing I want to reference here, I know I referenced these in the other videos, but just remember that when Konami realized that fusions and rituals respectively kind of just sucked ass, Konami just went out of their way and just said, you know what, let's make these types good again. Let's make these types of monsters playable. So with Fusion's case, most instances when they said, oh, this is a fusion archetype we want to make good, let's give them a busted fusion spell, probably some other ways to make up advantage, maybe their monsters float, and just good fusion boss monsters as well. Same thing kind of with rituals, where their problem is just you have to put in 3 cards to get 1 monster out of it. They came out with a ton of just generic search cards, so consistency was really high. We've seen archetypes like Necros that allow you to plus pretty well, and now we finally have Drytron, which is just the newest iteration of just abusing just like a super plus engine that's really consistent and allowing you to pretty much synergize with almost any ritual archetype in the game. So 2 different approaches of just kind of making individual archetypes good, and then making generic cards that allow you to support any new ritual archetype or old one that really needs it, which is really cool. So looking at spirits, obviously the drawback with spirits is their 2 main restrictions. This is the restrictions they're mainly known for. The first one is that none of them can be special summoned. It's like the first line in most of their texts. The second one is that on the end phase of a turn that they are normal or flip summoned, or flipped face up, not even summoned, they actually return themselves back to the hand. This makes it very hard for you to maintain board presence in a deck with spirits, because you normal them on your turn, do what you want to do, and can actually do some okay things on your turn, but then they bounce themselves back to hand on the end phase, meaning you have nothing on the field monster-wise by the time it comes to your opponent's turn, and sometimes you just get OTK'd because you can't protect yourself. And unless we get an archetype or just support in general that kind of helps solve this issue, it's really tough. And also the deck doesn't have a lot of extendability. A lot of times you just go normal summon 1 monster, end phase, add them back to hand, and pass turn, because they can't be special summoned. So it means your type of extenders become very specific. Not that Konami can't make those, it just means a lot of generic extenders don't really help the deck out in that way. So let's look at a couple of the actual good, whoops, that's not what I want there. Let's take a look at a couple of the actual good generic ritual card or spirit cards that already exist. The first one is a Mono Wado. This is probably the most recent one that you're used to seeing. I believe 2017 during True Draco / Pendulum Magician format. This card was pretty widely played in True Draco in a lot of builds. He pretty much says while he's on the field, monsters cannot activate their effects. Nothing. From hand, from grave. It's literally it's better than Skill Drain when it's on the field. It's more like Mystic Mind. Just no monster effects whatsoever aside from spirit effects. So your stuff is still good to go. Just a really, really insane, oppressive floodgate type effect. If there was a way for us to, in a spirit deck, pretty consistently get this guy out on the opponent's turn, that would be the first step in actually making a spirit deck competitive. Absolutely. This guy's a big one to keep in mind. Next up, we have Aratama. This is actually just Stratos for spirits. When he's normal summoned or flip face up, he can add any spirit monster from deck to hand. It's pretty good. I mean, it kind of harkens back, though, to if we don't have other ways to pretty consistently extend other spirit monsters out of the hand, we could still be in trouble. But the fact that this guy goes add and then on end phase jump back in hand so that you can normal summon him every single turn, you might be looking at a strategy where you can just slow the game down so that this guy just becomes insane every turn, right? Normal him every turn, search another guy, depending on what kind of support we get. Potentially that guy allows you to do something immediately. I would hope so, because just adding a guy and then passing is really bad. But definitely a card to keep an eye on. The fact that he searches the entire subtype is really, really strong. Next up here we have Resetsu. These last two are kind of interruptive ones, like a Mono Wado, but When he's normal or flipped up, he lets you potentially reveal a spirit in hand, another spirit, and then you can target a face-up monster on the field and return it to the hand. Pretty cool, just to bounce. And imagine if we could, like a Mono Watto, the big thing is, can we get these out on the opponent's turn? Because if we can, we're looking at something pretty strong, because you just go quick effect, extra normal summon for Rasetsu, bounce a monster. You're just getting quick bounces on the opponent's turn. That's pretty good. And his stats are decent too. Not the greatest attack, but 1900 defense is not terrible. And the last one here is Tsukuyomi. You might be laughing and saying, John, no way, Tsukuyomi. Come on, this card is so old. But listen, it's Book of Moon. When it's normal summon, target a monster on the field, change it to face down defense position. There's worse cards out there, especially if we can quick effect do this, right? Then we're actually looking at something. I mean, imagine if we got, let's say, like a decent engine with a new archetype that gave us maybe a trap card, a continuous trap card that says, do something. Maybe it's discard a card. Maybe it's, do something, reveal a spirit in hand. And if you do, add a spirit from your deck to your hand, then immediately after that, normal summon a spirit monster. And it just gives us a trap that just lets us quick normal summon every turn once we get it set up. I mean, that would be really nice to be able to just quick normal Tsukuyomi, quick normal Rasetsu, quick normal Amano Watto. This card will just single-handedly win you games if you could get him out on the opponent's turn. Or even quick summon Aratama, because that's another thing I want to talk about is, as far as the monsters, obviously the simplest thing would be oh, what if we just got a ton of spell and trap cards, like a spell like Fluanderies? That's a deck that doesn't special summon. That's really good. Maybe we get a field spell like them that gives us extra normal summons and lets us extend pretty well. That could be okay. That could definitely be a thing, but the problem would then come down to, how do we still maintain board presence? At least Fluanderies put stuff on board and put up interruptions. We still need something. And an idea I had is, what if we got spirit monsters where some of them had hand trap effects, where in the hand they say, just for example, let's say it reads, if your opponent does something, maybe one, maybe you have multiple, and it depends on what your opponent does. The first one says maybe if your opponent special summons, or special summons from deck, or normal summons, whatever. Or the other one says when your opponent activates a spell, activate the, reveal this card in hand, and if you do, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a spirit monster from your hand. So if you open it with any of your good, spirit monsters, like Amano Watto or Rasetsu or Tsukuyomi or something, you can immediately just get that normal summon, quick normal summon on the opponent's turn, which could be really good. Or maybe even Aratama. Normal summon Aratama, search a card, and then Aratama bounces back to hand on the end phase, so you have another normal summon for Aratama, you still have that other one in hand, and you searched another one. Just, there's definitely some cool things there. It would be maybe because that's one thing we've never seen, is an archetype that has an in-theme hand trap that is activatable on turn 0. I mean, I guess technically Ursa Arctics have some of those, but they're so resource inefficient. They you have to use 2 cards to get one okay interruption that it's kind of tough. You still go -1 in the hand usually, but it is what it is. I'd like to see something like that. That could be a pretty cool thing if they just made that a generic, if we made the new archetype, if it ends up being spirit, something like that. Or if we got more support and they got generic cards that kind of just end up being an engine, like Drytron is to rituals, that just facilitates spirits to a whole nother level. And then Konami feels more comfortable making more spirit archetypes because they actually have a base now, if they actually got that stuff to kind of work around, and they don't need to make every individual archetype insane, because that archetype's giving a little crutch to those archetypes whenever they do get released. So just some of those ideas. The deck needs to work on field presence, maintaining monster, spirit monsters on the field during the opponent's turn, as well as extendability. Because you can't special summon, it locks you out of a lot of generic ways of extension that a lot of other decks have access to that we just straight up don't. And so I'd like to see that, as well as maybe some cards that help us extend via normal summon on the opponent's turn, which would be really sick, and on our turn too, maybe to get things going. We got to be able to play going second as well. But yeah, really, really cool. There's a handful of cards here. Hopefully we get something here at some point. I want all 3 of these types to do it. I think there's a really good chance one of the 3 ends up being the new archetype for Power of the Elements, the TCG exclusive. We'll obviously have to wait a couple months to see, but I do think there's a good shot one of these 3 ends up in there. But yeah, there's my thoughts on spirits. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover here. Of course, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts. What other things do you think you'd want to see to help cover up some of their weaknesses? Maybe give me a couple of specific card designs on what you think could be huge to help cover up what the type needs. And yeah, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in another video. Peace.